Hi everyone, hope you guys are all doing well today. Today's video, I'm going to talk about BlackBerry stock because yesterday, if you saw my post, I just posted on the community timeline and on X/Twitter in terms of the news. So after hours, the stock pretty much tanked 15, 14, 13%, give or take. It was just hovering between 11, 12, 13, 14%. And it went from basically $3.50, give or take, US by the way, and then it dropped in after hours a little bit less than, so it hit like 286 in after hours, bounced back up to like $3.10, $3.12, and then we opened and we continued that drop and we're closed at $2.93, again US. After hours is down a penny, give or take. The question is, why did it go down? Is it justified? Is the market overreacting? So on and so forth. And in my opinion, like always, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a professional, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. And at the same time, I do own shares in BlackBerry stock, so keep that in mind while you're watching as well. But in my opinion, I think the market is overreacting. The reason why I'm stating that is because we knew that the debt payment date is coming up on February 15th, and it could have been potentially pushed till May, right? So Fairfax owns that debt / Prem Watsa's company or holding company. At the same time, we knew that was going to happen, and then they stated in the past that they are most likely going to find other financial ways to pay off that debt in terms of like refinancing. But we already knew that this was coming, right? Maybe people are kind of worried that it's a senior notes. I'm not 100% sure, but this is another way that companies do it. And at the same time, I'm pretty sure that they talked mentioned this kind of debt that they have to repay back to the third-party companies that were trying to bring value to the company overall in terms of share price. And one thing that was probably shared to them was you could do senior notes. And if you guys are not aware what senior notes are essentially just basically lend us this money, we'll pay you interest on this, and then it'll be converted to a certain amount of shares if you want later in the future, but not a certain amount of shares. A certain amount of shares is determined at the time of the agreement. But the reason why this senior notes is attractive to some investors / institutional investors, right, is that the fact that this debt / these notes, these essentially bonds, I guess, is has to be paid off before any other debt if the company goes bankrupt. So it is an attractive investment because it's more safer than just investing and then potentially the company goes to bankruptcy and then your debt may or may not be paid off, right? So before they pay off any other debts, these senior notes have priority in terms of being paid back first, right? Now, in terms of the debt itself, like I stated, we already knew that this was coming. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to BlackBerry. I'm going to read the press release. So if you want to pull up the press release, just go to BlackBerry Investor Relations website, scroll down to press releases, and then you'll see that it was the latest thing that was posted. Click on this. BlackBerry announces proposed private offering of 160 million of convertible senior notes, press release, January, et cetera, et cetera. Click this, opens a PDF file, which is right here, which I'm going to go through. But the thing is, though, in terms of these senior notes, is expected, in my opinion. The only thing that's kind of throwing me off is the fact that they didn't extend the currently. So, for example, right here, it already mentions it. BlackBerry intends to use the net proceeds from the offerings to senior notes to fund the repayment or repurchase of its outstanding 150 million aggregate principal amount of 1.75% extendable convertible unsecured debentures due February 15, 2024, which Fairfax Holdings owned that debt, right, at 1.75%. I was kind of hoping and assuming that Prem Watsa, Fairfax Holdings, would extend this. But the problem is they didn't extend this to May, which was, again, in the last quarter, they said originally it's February 15th or sometime February, and then it may be extended to May, right? But they didn't, so that's kind of throwing me off a little bit. There might be a reason, might not be a reason, or maybe they want to take advantage of something for the time being. But I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. So these senior notes, the thing is, though, you might be asking, how is it an advantage to the company versus them just going to someone else to refinance, right? So with these senior notes, the reason why they're attractive is, again, they have to be paid off before they're paid off any other debts if the company goes bankrupt. But at the same time, that comes with a little bit of a caveat. The caveat is because there's that high level of security of being paid back, the interest rate is lower. So BlackBerry gets a lower interest rate. Will it be as low as 1.75%? I doubt it personally, because I think interest rates are like roughly hovering about 5% in terms of the federal side. I might be wrong. I should have probably checked that before, but I know in terms of mortgage rates and all that stuff, it's like at 7%, 6 point something percent. So it's still going to be relatively high, but at the same time, it should be lower because the nature of senior notes. So there's that. Now, in terms of the press release, I'm going to read it and then I'm going to elaborate more as I go. BlackBerry announces proposed private offering of $160 million of convertible senior notes. Today announced that it intends to, which today, by the way, just to clarify, was January 23rd, 2024. Again, I did post it on my post on community forums. I think it was 5 minutes when the article came out, or I might have been a little bit later, but the press release wasn't out yet. And then on my X/Twitter account as well. Today announced that it intends to offer, subject to market and other conditions, $160 million aggregate principal amount of convertible senior notes due 2029. Again, that's a good thing. The notes are due 2029 in a private offering. The notes will be offered only to persons reasonably believed to be qualified institutional buyers in accordance with Rule 144A under the Securities Act of 1933, as amended, the Securities Act, and pursuant to prospectus exemptions in Canada and other jurisdictions. So one thing to note here too, it's directly to qualified institutional buyers that they deem fit. I think this is kind of important just because, so this is the thing. Because BlackBerry has like low volume overall in terms of trading volume, you could see multiple times that, like for example, when this news came out, the stock kind of went down and it was roughly about, I think it was like 900 and something thousand shares traded, and it dragged down the stock roughly about somewhere between 11 to 14%. So quite a bit of a drop for a low amount of shares that were essentially moving the stock, right? So in the past, we've seen the stock would rise up with a small amount of volume shares as well. So technically the stock could be in a way, I'm not saying it's manipulated or anything, but I'm just saying that it could easily be moved to a certain direction with a small amount of funds. So because of that is kind of scary for institutional investors, because when they buy the shares, they're essentially driving up the share price, which you could think it's beneficial. But the problem is when it comes to selling, they can't sell just as much because they'll bring it down as well at the same time. So it's just like, it's a catch-22 where you're just like, you don't know what to do exactly. In this sense, institutional investors could be invested without having that situation happen in terms of being concerned with volume. At the same time, this is just my opinion. I could be wrong. And at the same time, in terms of the market reaction, right? Again, I think the market is overreacting, but there might be some things that I don't see personally. That's why I say do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling, because this is just my opinion. And this is what I think and what I see. But there might be other things that I'm not seeing and I'm not reacting well to, if that makes sense. So to continue the note, BlackBerry also expects to grant the initial purchasers of the notes the option to purchase within a 13-day period beginning on and including the date of which the notes are first issued, up to an additional $25 million aggregate principal amount of the notes. So fair enough. BlackBerry intends to use the net proceeds from the offerings of the notes to fund the repayment of or repurchase of its outstanding $150 million aggregate principal amount of 1.75% extendable convertible unsecured debentures due February 15, 2024. The existing debentures and the remainder, if any, for the general corporate purposes. So if there's anything extra that's raised up from this whole entire senior notes, I might have been saying security notes by accident in the past, but senior notes, there's extra, it's going to be used for general corporate purposes. The thing is too, they can't necessarily state the interest rate that they're going to make these agreements with. I'll explain why, because there's additional parts. It's essentially what I want to state is it depends on when the transaction happens, and I guess they're going to lock in interest rates during that time. It's almost like the same thing when you're getting a house and doing a mortgage rate. They give you a ballpark of how much interest rate will be roughly, but until you lock in, I can't remember how many days, but there's a lock-in period, then that's when they have the agreement and interest rate based on the day you lock in and all that stuff. The notes will be so the senior notes, right, will be BlackBerry general unsecured obligation ranking senior to BlackBerry's obligations under the existing debentures. The notes will mature on February 15, 2029, unless earlier converted, redeemed, or repurchased. BlackBerry may satisfy and any conversions of the notes by paying or delivering, as the case may be, cash, its common shares, or a combination of cash and its common shares at BlackBerry's election, or in the case of any notes called for redemption that are converted during the related redemption period, solely its common shares. The interest rate on the initial conversion rate of and the other terms of the notes will be determined at the time of pricing of the offering. So basically what I stated earlier, again, the main purpose of these senior notes is investors putting in money, getting interest rate that is pretty much hopefully secure if they think that the company is deemed fit, right? The closing of the offering will be subject to customary conditions, including approval from the Toronto Stock Exchange. The offer and sale of the notes and common shares is issuable upon conversion of the notes, if any have not been registered under the Securities Act or any state securities laws. Unless a subsequent sale is registered under the Securities Act, the notes and the common shares are issuable upon conversion of the notes, if any, may only be offered or sold in the United States in a transaction that is exempt from, or in a transaction not subject to, the registration requirements of the Securities Act and other applicable security laws. The press release does not constitute an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any of these securities, nor shall there be any sale of these securities in any state or jurisdiction in which such an offer, solicitation, or sale should be unlawful prior to the registration or qualification under the securities law of any such state or jurisdiction. Any offers of the notes will be made up only to persons reasonably believed to be qualified institutional buyers by the means of private offering memorandum in accordance with Rule 144A. Under the Securities Act, the notes will be offered in Canada and other jurisdictions under available prospectus exemptions. I think personally, in my opinion, the market has overreacted because we knew this was coming. It's not a really surprise in my opinion. People are probably just worried about the interest rates, but that's more locked down later on. Again, they did the senior notes to get a lower interest rate. And I was hoping to release a video for the next earnings that's coming out in March of 2024 for Q4. Hopefully I'll be posting that within the next 7 days, so be on the lookout for that. So if you do want to be notified when I do upload that video, subscribe so you can be notified when I do upload that video. But yeah, now the question is too, at the same time, can it go lower? Obviously it could go lower. That's the downfall, right? But let me see, because I showed us something earlier the other day. I was hoping it would not break these support levels potentially, right? Let me just adjust this a little bit. So it already broke the support level that I thought was during the pandemic time frame, and then the downward trend resistance / support level that dates back since 2008. More, you could see a bunch of times it bounced off it as actual proof that it's bounced off it multiple times. And the thing is though, right about here during the pandemic, the first drop was 271. So we could go to 271. Again, we could go lower. It's not like it can't go lower. But in my opinion, I think the market is overreacting. So we will get a bounce up at one point. The problem is this earnings that's coming up on March of 2024. We already have estimates for it. And the estimates are okay. They're just basically, it's almost like a flat line from what I remember. I don't see... from what I looked at the numbers, like real growth. So we basically have to wait until the earnings after that, which is Q1, first quarter earnings for the next fiscal year. So either way, I'll keep you guys posted as much as I can, and hopefully it bounces back up, which I'm sure, personally, in my opinion, I'm sure it will. I just think the market overreacted personally. But again, that's just my opinion though. So please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. And again, I do own shares of BlackBerry stock, so keep that in mind as well when you watch this video. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.